Great. Well, welcome everyone. We've got quite a number of people joining the call, and we'll continue to let people in as they connect. But thanks for joining the conversation today. We've got Sarah Saso, who's got an incredible roster of experience in CSR, both on the brand side and on the rights holder property side. And then Tania Little, who has extensive philanthropic and partnership experience, and as I'm learning in our prep calls, it is now doing a variety of manufacturing and overseeing an incredible amount of different operations as she's kind of built her career. So looking forward to the conversation, talking about transparency and leading positions in corporate partnership, whether it's philanthropic or in sponsorship. But before we get into that, I'm going to make a plug for our next session. So on October 21st, Melissa Moscow from Pacific National Exhibition, so the PNE out in Vancouver, is going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about delivering creative and safe audience engagements. So what they've been able to do over the past 5-6 months and moving forward out in Vancouver with the PNE. So some information will go out to everyone here, and that should be live in the next day or two for registration. So looking forward to that, but getting back to today's conversation, I know you both provided me bios. I don't think I'm going to do it justice. So let me introduce Sarah first, and Sarah, you can introduce yourself, and then Tania.
Wow, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Saso. Last year, I left Toronto to buy a big, bad farm in Grey County, and I actually live close to where Brad has a place. So we've connected over the last year, and his spouse, Mary Beth, and I went to public school together, which is great. I've been in the sector for a long time. I've been on both sides of the table, both where Tania is in asking for strategic, strong partnerships, and then building them on the other side. And I have a background in PR and event management. And I say I did the old school MBA, the hard knocks MBA. I went and got experience in PR and marketing and communications and CSR and employee volunteering and fundraising the hard way, because I wanted to learn how to do it myself and understand and fully grasp it. So I have a big toolkit of skills. I've been helping, since I left Toronto, I've been mostly helping nonprofits and small businesses pivot to get online and how to tell a great story to your customer base. So it was great when Brad and Mary Beth asked me if I wanted to talk about some of the things I've been writing about on LinkedIn, and then Tania seemed just a natural person to come to the table, because although we have never worked with each other directly, we have immense respect for each other and the work that we do. And I recognize her strength and skill set and storytelling. So I was really excited to be here with her today, because I'm a big fan.
Well, boy, that's hard to follow. So I haven't left Toronto. I'm still in Toronto. In fact, I feel like I've spent 20 hours a day at my computer in Toronto, watching the season and the world happen outside. So just first off, love that Sarah's intro, and just to say, yes, definitely lots and lots of background. I love that you skipped over the number of years, Sarah. So I think I'm sitting at about 22, maybe 23 years as per the gray and white streaks in the hair, but own every one of those years and feel a deep sense of pride in being able to work as a servant leader in the space for as long as I have, and learn and grow every day. Definitely have worked both on the charity side, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally, as well as on the consulting side. So supporting charities through governance, organizational development and design, capital campaign, fundraising, consulting, major gift practice, etc. So definitely have seen some different sides of the business. But I will say my role at Food Banks Canada has been probably the most challenging one of my career, especially in the last 7 months. And we'll have a bit of a chance to, I think, dive into that as we get into our conversation. So I don't want to take up any more time.
Perfect. Well, thanks to both of you for joining today. And Welcome everybody. Tania, Sarah, and I have had a couple conversations, and we will fill the air for an hour. So if you want to jump in with questions, feel free to pop it into the chat, and you can ask as we go. And we've also got your advanced questions, but hopefully we'll get some time to cover that. There's definitely a lot of interest and a lot of great questions that were posed ahead of time. But I think the last 6-7 months have definitely been a challenge, and food banks is one of those things that's really been highlighted, especially as a need and a growing concern for people as COVID has hit their jobs and their activity. So, Tania, do you want to give a bit of brief of just kind of where your position has been?
Yeah, and I was going to say, I've got, there are some friends on the phone that are within this sector, shout outs to Neil, and I would say collaborators in the space like Breakfast Clubs of Canada. Hey, Paul. So we had a line of sight to kind of what was happening around the world with COVID through our partnership with the Global Food Banking Network. So we had an opportunity to see a lay of the land. We knew what might be coming. We had a good sense of how it might impact our business, but we did make a decision fairly early on to be able to go out with a bold campaign. So some of you may have seen that we launched in mid-March. I think offices shut down in the city on March 13th, and on March 16th, we announced a $750,000 gift, which kicked off our $150 million fundraising campaign. And this campaign was really scoped to be able to support the food banking network, because we knew that what was coming down the pipe was operational shifts, massive impacts to a core volunteer base, likely supply chain challenges, increased need from the client lens, and also just a whole new way to think about collaboration and partnership on program delivery. So we launched this big campaign, and over the last 7 months, we have seen extraordinary generosity and support from Canadians, from the government, from corporations and foundations who've chosen to join our call to action and really engage and give back at the community level. So I want to just start the kind of very big picture, high level there, because that will obviously take us down, I think, lots of different veins. But I will say the purpose and the intent of the campaign was really to provide that bold vision and to be able to provide support to the food banking system across Canada, which, for those of you who may not know it, it's about 3,000 organizations in a dispersed network, meaning we're not a federated structure, we're not a parent company. We work in a respectful partnership with a dispersed network of 3,000 organizations coast to coast to coast, who share a common interest and work towards a vision of a Canada where no one goes hungry. So I think that's an important framing piece, because for those of you who haven't had a chance to work within a very complex dispersed network, it's challenging and wonderful and complex, and brings a lot of opportunity with it, which again, we'll have a chance to talk through today.
And I guess one of the framing discussions that maybe we kick it off from there, because it came up with a couple of the advanced questions, and maybe Sarah, you've got opinions on it, just sort of the difference between philanthropic support and corporate engagement, corporate sponsorship. If one of you wants to tackle that and just kind of lay out where you create those engagement points.
Yeah, that's been a big education tool for me for corporate Canada and boards of directors, that this intentional philanthropy is great. Philanthropy should match and fit with the organization that is supporting it. But the other thing is that, sponsorship is a very different animal than donations. Donations are philanthropic gifts, which you get a tax receipt for, and you should not have a high expectation for marketing around it. Sponsorship is very targeted, and you sponsor something to get to a target market, to a target audience, to achieve, brand halo effect, those sorts of things. And it's not that you can't achieve it with a donation, but there should be no expectation on your part that you're going to get a marketing benefit. If it comes, you know, great. But the number one thing is that line has been very blurred. And I think that we need to do a better job, obviously, of showing that you can't have a mutually beneficial relationship through both. But the money actually also does sometimes come from the marketing and advertising or communications budget, where the philanthropy budget is a different and separate budget. So I've been in companies where I've had responsibility for solely sponsorship, which has nothing to do with the philanthropy of the company. That was at CIBC. And then at Manulife, I had sort of a mix of employee volunteering, corporate sponsorship, and donations. And then when I went to Green Shield, I had responsibility for the foundation, which was philanthropy, and then the corporate donations program, which had a mix of sponsorship and donations. So you should always, you know, try and find out whose budget you're talking to, and then that'll help you figure out whether or not you're asking for a donation or a sponsorship. And also educate, if you're on the nonprofit side, you know, educating some, I see Tania smiling, but educating, you know, the company that you're working with to help them understand the difference. We need to do a better job of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, you did a great job of, I think, defining very clearly the difference between, but I will say the biggest insight I've had is how blurry that line is for companies, and or when companies go into crisis from a business lens, how that line can get confused, or how people who, for example, have a particular expertise or subject matter knowledge base. So for example, I'm a philanthropy person, but now I'm being told to drive an activation that benefits the business, or the marketing team who's being told, here's a pot of money, do something good with it. And, you know, that line gets blurred very, very easily. And what we saw, again, just for folks, not because you know, you're not all following along the way those of us who are living it are, we set a campaign goal of $150 million to be raised, and we're currently, with deep gratitude, we have secured almost $126 million in pledges towards that goal. Yeah, it's crazy. But why I say that is that we have learned so much through this process around changing need, changing priorities, how and when that line is blurred, who and when we're having to have those conversations with. I will say, because we were moving at, I felt like, the speed of light, businesses were too. And so it has been really fascinating to see how much quicker we're able to go through what I would call like the good discovery process. You use the term education. I use the term discovery because, you know, no one likes to be told they're being educated, but we go on a journey together of learning for sure. And I think getting very, very clear on purpose, intent, outcomes, and success are absolutely essential upfront, so that the lines get less blurry and you're much clearer about what you're able to deliver on.
And I think that's probably incredibly relevant, looking at, you know, the impact, and some of the stories you fed to me in our prep calls, is just that, you know, looking at what brands were doing as COVID was evolving. You kind of had that freeze for about 2 weeks where people were like, okay, I don't know if I can have any messaging out there, to then there was a consistent, oh, we're here for you messaging. And now has been the pivot of, okay, what am I doing to the community and trying to stand out? And I think, you know, probably had some definite challenges. You were talking about some of the people reaching out to you who you hadn't had conversations with, and just trying to have that dating process to figure out where you sit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I had shared with Brad leading into today was that we went from, say, having about 60, 65 national and multinational major corporations to 220 in a span of a blink of an eye. And we also went from literally, in some cases, picking up the phone and receiving $1 million contribution or pledge for contribution that was philanthropically based, or the intent was on their part was philanthropically based, to then find out, you know, 6 weeks in, actually it wasn't philanthropic, that they wanted to attach a business objective to it. So it required a lot of agility on our team's part around how we were supporting, recognizing, activating those partnerships. And it sometimes changed with high frequency. So we just, again, be nimble, be adaptive, be listening, be responsive to those partners, but also be really clear on, if you make this decision, you don't get this benefit. So if you want a tax receipt, you cannot do these other things. And if you do even one of them, that nullifies your ability to get it. You know, maybe you want a business receipt. So you were having to really have a team of very knowledgeable, skilled people who understood the boundaries, the process, the case, and the opportunities, and could position with partners very, very quickly, so that they could make good business decisions. But we really saw, again, for those partners who walked in the door and wrote a check, you literally weren't having a discovery process where you would, I call it, like, some people hate this term, but for me, it's like a version of dating, right? You're getting to know each other. You're building, you know, the basis of relationship, trust, communication, conflict resolution, all of those frames, which are really important to make sure you have values alignment at the onset. We lost a lot of those windows. And so you were kind of thrown into situations where trust was given and you were given trust, and then you just were working very quickly together. And then sometimes having to peel back or work through conflict or whatever. So yes, I think that there was the process that we did before COVID in how we cultivated, how we solicited, how we stewarded, and we reported. And then there was a reality that's been since COVID. And we saw stages of just general philanthropy to now changes of moving back in a pretty significant way back towards, we're trying to get our business back on track. What can you do to help us as a partner realign back to our business?
And Brad, maybe I can just add one thing to that, which is around purpose, right? What is the one thing have strived for in the companies that I've worked for is, what are you in business to do? And how does that fit with an organization or a challenge in community and society that you want to help solve? You know, and at Green Shield, it was around healthcare, because we were a healthcare company, a social enterprise that helped people get access to healthcare. So that made very much sense for us. And I know, Tania, you know, exactly as what Brad said, which was in the beginning of this COVID, we started seeing, you know, chat rooms and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn saying, oh God, they better not advertise to us because we're just trying to survive day by day. And then it was, yeah, we're here for you. And then it was, here's what we're supporting and here's what we're funding. And I'm sure there are some companies that would come to you, not to put you on the spot, that weren't a good fit for you. And so that's another challenge, which is how when you're in a position to serve marginalized people, and then it turns into everyday Canadians just make ends meet and get access to food, healthy food to feed their families, how do you turn away things that aren't a good fit for you? That's a real challenge.
Sorry, it's actually easy. And
good.
Why I'm going to say it's easy where you think it's hard is that really knowing your mission, knowing your values, knowing what's right from a purpose lens. I think integrity is one of the greatest things that we have an obligation to follow and commit to as leaders in the sector. And so often when we had partners out of the blue who reached out to us that weren't organizations that we didn't know well, where we hadn't had the time to do that philosophy check, values check, leadership alignment check, like, again, looking holistically at the partnership. If we felt that, for example, they came to us and they wanted a really public-facing activation, something that was going to be big and bold and flashy, we would say, talk about your internal culture. Tell us what you've done around this issue before. How have you demonstrated a commitment to this? And then we could say, okay, you know, I realize this is your first foray into this space, but I will tell you, your employees, your customers, your vendors, your partners will see no value. They will see you as opportunistic. It will in fact come back and burn you. And from our perspective, we were hyper aware of the profile that our brand had and the risks associated with that. So the answer became actually very easy, because if we do not have those pieces clear internally, like, that's the navigation, like the compass with partnerships. So our team had great confidence. And I will say it's not just me. every single person in my small little development team has that same core value set at the core of their navigation. And so they are empowered to decline partnerships based upon misalignment of values, purpose, intent, etc. So it's not hard, but I think for organizations that may be newer in this space, that's often one of the very first pieces of advice I say is know thyself well.
I think that's one of the big challenges when people they haven't had the opportunity or haven't even thought of understanding what their equity is, what's their offering to partners, whether it's on a philanthropic side or, you know, even what the offering is from a sponsorship partnership side, because they're very different positioning. And then on the brand side, some people they want to get the deal done, and you don't even have a true understanding of the objectives of the brand. So I think, do you have certain discovery questions that you work with to sort of say, okay, how do I probe to see what's a fit?
So I wish I could say yes, because I feel like I could bottle it or package it and sell a lot of it if I had the exact thing. It's 25 years almost of experience, right? I mean, yes, I would say there's probably some core fundamental questions, but the discovery process is very iterative. And we also really believe that the discovery process has to last as long as it needs to get to that place of alignment. So it's not like, oh, I have 5 questions and they've ticked the box and that means everything's perfect. It really is about taking the time to explore deeply on the values, the vision, success, how success is defined, what are they doing internally to support the partnership. Again, lots of people can throw money at you. And if money is your sole objective as an organization, that can be very blinding. If you're truly interested in developing that long-term partnership, then you're going to take a step back because you really are looking to create that win-win scenario for both entities. And that's a long-term engagement process. I think one of the other pieces that I would just highlight is that one of the values that we look for in partnership to build out long, extensive partnerships is a learning mindset. And that element is really important because the one and done campaign is not the kind of campaign we're interested in. We're really interested to go on that journey with a partner, meet them where they are today, but see that light of commitment to grow and learn together and build something. That's really ultimately one of the big flags we're looking for in partners. And a lot of our discovery, as I said, it values, philosophy, intent, communication style, conflict resolution, clear understanding of objectives. Are all of the key decision makers at the table? Or are you being blocked and do you only have one point of contact and actually can't get a line of sight to the other people who influence the decision? Do they have clarity on purpose? Is it real and authentic? I mean, again, some of these things I think feel very intuitive, and some of them, as you begin to probe thematic areas, you start to realize, oh no, I need to go and explore a little more here or a little more there. It's not a black and white process. It really does shift depending on the partner, the level of self-awareness, and where they are in their own journey.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side, Sarah, your experience on the representing corporate and the investment side, how do you find those partners and coach them to where you want to be? Because they don't have the full understanding of who they are and what they can do with you.
Well, I think it's a couple of things. First of all, Tania talked about long-term. I'm totally against the one and done. And I'd never enter into partnerships that way because that doesn't actually give an organization enough time to ramp up and to deliver what you want them to deliver, just as it would not in your marketing product area of your company. You can't just do something for a year and then say, oh, well, we're not going to do that again. Think about what you've invested in it. So as far as what I look for, it's, how, first of all, does the brand of the charity reflect your own brand and vice versa? Will you be doing them harm? Will they be doing you harm? What's the purpose of your organization and theirs, and what's the fit? A shared goal or vision. The board of directors, who's on their board, and are there any synergies with your own organization? What's the return on investment in terms of impact? What gets delivered and how is it delivered? How do they move the needle on their particular issue? What is their success rate? And it's okay if they haven't had any success, as Tania said, it's the learning journey. there has to be trust, and there has to be mechanisms for open communication. And you know, I think that's one thing that I am known for some of the people that are on the call that have worked with me, is that I believe in open communication, and I don't think you have to be afraid of failure. I think you just pivot if you have to. And I've been in some circumstances where an organization has come to me and said, oh my gosh, you know, we tried to deliver something and we couldn't. So what does that mean? And I'm like, okay, well, did it lead us to something else? Yes. Okay, well then let's talk about that. So, but I do think you have to be able to have that accountability, the transparency on both sides, the open mechanisms for trust. This is a partnership and it's an investment, and you need to think of it in terms of if it was your own money, what due diligence would you do? It's not just let's throw some money at an issue because we need to look good. I think that the trust, the transparency, the accountability is a huge, huge, huge deal. And then the fit has to be there. It has to make sense.
I think that credible transparency piece is huge. You know, there's been some very public issues that have been highlighted by, you know, we're not going to go naming organizations, but everybody I think is well aware of what's gone on in the last few months. And it's, you know, how do you make sure that you've got that fit, that what you're offering up is the, you know, the proper fit for the organization, whether it's you're on the brand side or on the you know, rights holder side. And I guess that becomes one of the big elements, you know, thinking, you know, my first thought when I think of food banks is a philanthropic gift. So to think about partnerships and how a sponsor gets engaged in that, you know, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is, again, one of the really unique things about this dispersed network is, you know, we're so fortunate to work with such an incredibly gifted group of agencies and food banks across Canada. They are the knowledge holders, the expert leaders within their markets and communities, and they have a pulse on what hunger looks like in their particular community. They develop and design programs, support systems, and partnerships that I think enable their work to happen on the ground. I think an important differentiator is that pre-COVID, Food Banks Canada looked one way, and post-COVID, we look a very different way. And so, and we're not post-COVID entirely, but I'm going to say post-COVID at a point in time, pulse check right now. So pre-COVID, we were really a corporate partnership machine. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. I just really mean that was our primary focus. 97% of our revenue came from corporate partnerships, philanthropic, sponsorship, cause marketing, activation-based partnerships. Since COVID's begun, we are now partially government funded, which we had never been previously. We have more foundations, national and international foundations that are supporting us that had not previously. We have a much more diversified base of corporate support than we had ever had before. And we went from having kind of 2,000 individual donors to about 165,000 individual donors. So our donor base and the business of fundraising has changed quite dramatically. What I will say is when I look at our corporate partnerships, if I just slice out that kind of particular donor segment, they really still look the same. It's philanthropic, it's sponsorship, and it's activation based in some way. So I think those things look the same, but what I will say is it's more about the phases of the pandemic. So initially very much philanthropically based, and now a much greater focus on activation and business objective based.
And then, you know, Sarah, from, you know, your perspective, you know, have brands had to shift their approach in how they're getting engaged?
It's been interesting, definitely, to watch it, taking the pulse of you know, my colleagues and friends in the sector and asking them, is your commitment changed? Is your philanthropy changed? Has your sponsorship changed? They said, you know, we're holding steady with the plans that we have. We may do some initial, this is urgent need, we're going to support it. stuff, but we're going to try and stay true as much as we can to our objectives. The one thing I will say is that businesses are, you know, in a little bit of crisis, financially worried about what the next year will do, worried about what this year has done. And it'll be interesting to watch what happens with the corporate donations budgets. That said, I'm really seeing an increase in issues related to diversity and inclusion, corporate social responsibility, purpose. You know, I'm talking to my friend Chris Jarvis, who's an expert in volunteering, has said that, you know, the micro volunteering, the stuff that you can do from home, the way you can use your skill set, those sorts of things are really being utilized. And that comes back to something that Tania talked about earlier, which was, and I think you touched on it as well, Brad, which is it doesn't always have to be about money, right? It can be about skill set and volunteering and resources within your company, supporting an organization that way. What have you got to help? And it was really interesting when I worked on CIBC Run for the Cure, because we had a round table of all the sponsors. And we met with CBCF and we talked about where were there things that we could all contribute to help the Run for the Cure be successful. And it was really enlightening. And it was also wonderful for us as sponsors to engage with people that were outside the financial services sector, because we got to learn from what their approach was, which made us a better sponsor. So, you know, I think I love those kind of, you know, Tania's talked about the learning journey, and I really think that's a great takeaway for me today, which is just to call it what it is, which is that, you know, learning from each other, collaborating, and in sponsorship, you know, you don't have to be competitive. You actually can be inclusive and collaborative. And maybe you don't, you know, want two banks or two consumer marketing companies in the same room sponsoring the same thing, but maybe there is actually times when people should come together on an issue, right? So I think it's just about being creative right now and doing that check-in and finding out where corporate is with their funding, you know, and also being understanding, right? They're going through a lot. You know, you don't know what's going on with them, and they'd probably love to stay supporting you at the same level that they always have, but they might have some internal challenges as well. There might have been layoffs and financial concerns, and you just have to kind of continue to be there and be their partner. And it comes back to that trust and transparency of communication and doing a check-in and leading first with, you know, that's the other thing I found a lot of, leading first with, how are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Is everyone safe and well? Tell me about what's going on with you first, and being connected human to human before you go in for the, I need this from you, or I'm hoping to get this from you.
Yeah, and actually that leads really nicely into the question that Layla's popped up, you know, is around valuation in the ask. And there are a couple of advanced questions about that. You know, I've seen tons and tons of people, and you guys probably have, where, you know, the ask is whatever I decide I need to run my activity, as opposed to looking at the value of the offering. So do you have thoughts, suggestions on, you know, creating the value? And definitely there's a perception difference now in person versus virtual on how that valuation has changed too.
Maybe I'll just start. I mean, we have less traditional, like, kind of property and sponsorship based work that I would say more core valuation is really an expectation. On our philanthropy side, we absolutely, you know, we have a core set of benefits that we would provide even to a philanthropic partner. But again, as Sarah's already noted, that's less about the give me a lot of marketing benefit. That's like the more how we're recognizing and thinking. And on the activation side, which is what we primarily focus on, you're negotiating through what the benefits and deliverables and outcomes are going to be. So it's less about a prescriptive valuation. It's more about we align, we agree, expectations, role clarity, outcomes, who and what will do the work. That's kind of the greater piece, I think, on our end.
And then for me, you're asking value from corporate, like, you know, having received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications and proposals, really, I think it's about knowing what your budget is, the people coming to you, knowing what you support and what's your mission, vision, and values. What are you trying to do with your philanthropy or your sponsorship? Who are your customers? I mean, Denny Young and I did a webinar a couple months ago about what makes a great partnership. And it really goes back to what Tania's saying about the relationship and the long term. And sometimes it might be a preliminary investigation about, you know, Sarah, what are you looking to do? How are you looking to support the community? I see you support this. Would you be open to having a discussion with me? And now is a time when actually people are very interested in being connected. So I think they would welcome those kinds of discussions more so than they have before, because we're not really getting that social as much as we have. We still might be at our desk 15, 16 hours a day, but I think sometimes having just those discussions are great. And then as far as evaluation, I mean, as far as value, I think you have to look at what it's going to cost to run a program, and you have to be realistic about that. And you can't just, you know, either on the one side say, oh, well, I see that company, I've gotten this a lot. I see that company's marquee on the top of the building, so they must have buckets of money. So I'm just going to go in and ask them, I'm going to go swing for the fences and ask them for $1 million. Well, you know what? Our donations budget total is $1 million. So, and our sponsorship marketing, if I'm going to go over to there, I have to find out what they want to market to, and does your plan meet their market? So a lot of times I spent having conversations both at Manulife and CIBC with wealth management and marketing groups who were doing client entertainment and wanted to have special, unique events and experiences. So it might take a little bit of work to go and find out, you know, who has a need in the area that you're being approached on, and then what is the value of that need, and being realistic about it.
And I think some of that just comes right down to, you know, the difference between having discovery leading into longer conversations and building that relationship versus leading with a deck. You know, the first conversation is, you know, here's gold, silver, bronze, or whatever, however it's been priced out, without thinking about where the partnership is. So I don't know.
It's on like my like number one no. In fact, I have hives right now from hearing you even say it out loud. We never lead with a deck. Ever, ever, ever. It's assumption based. You are assuming a million things that you do not know about your partner. It is a conversation. It is a dialogue. It is demonstrating deep listening, deep curiosity. It is understanding the DNA of the business, where they are at a point in time, what their priorities are, and how you can identify alignment and value for both to create a win. And so that piece, I mean, literally I'm itchy now from even thinking about it. But I think that piece is important. And I just see a question here from Jody on the impact side, which to me is kind of related to the value and valuation component, which is, you know, how do companies know they're moving the needle on something? And I'm going to be the first to put it out there, and I do have people on the phone that will hold me very honestly. Neil Hetherington, I'm thinking of you. We work with a very complex system, and I will say we have varying levels of sophistication within our network and within that system. And so we have organizations that understand, for example, theory of change. They understand the difference between outputs, outcomes, and impact. And then we have a whole big group of them that have no clue what even those words mean on a piece of paper. So we have taken an approach as an organization that it is not fair or reasonable for us to mandate an impact measure or a theory of change upon a system of coordinated organizations we're working with, but we are quite thrilled to be working together on the development of a North Star goal where everybody can identify something that they can own and contribute towards that North Star goal. And then they are evaluating themselves against what they have an ability to do and offer towards that shared goal. It is very, very complex work to do this work within a dispersed system and a very complex ecosystem. Jody's going, yes. So totally, right? This is really hard work. So I think the other piece is that's got to be part of the honesty you bring to relationships with your partners. You can't expect yourselves, your organizations to be perfect. You don't have to be. Part of being good leaders is being a little bit vulnerable and being able to say, you know, we don't hit everything out of the ballpark. Here are some of the areas we're struggling with, or here are some of the areas that we don't have perfectly sorted out, but here's what we can do, right? And again, that's really about having the dialogue around your partners with what and how is success defined? What will that look like? What is the definition to them of success from a business lens, from a partnership lens, and then building out measures that you can jointly own and jointly contribute to. Again, this does not have to be prescriptive. And even if your partner comes at you and says, I need X, you can say, but I can deliver X, but I can give you Y, Z, A, B, and C. Can we find a way to find a common starting place that we can grow from? Again, learning journey, we're on it together. We're committed to finding ways to be successful. It just doesn't have to be perfect on day one. And to be honest, if you had a partner that's like, nope, you don't have impact measures, I'm out, they're not the right partner for you. And that's okay. I don't know why we have a fear as fundraisers. Like, I realize we all have goals we want to achieve, but we have to be okay. Like, we're putting our mission first. That's really what's most important in our work.
And I found
mission drift is a big thing. Big thing. Mission drift.
Oh, yes.
I found a really good question to ask, and it's really revealed a lot when I'm having a conversation with somebody who's coming in as the moneyed partner, is who are you reporting to internally, and what do you need to show them when you're reporting back? Because that seems to enlighten a lot of the conversation about, okay, how do I prove success to for you, that you go back and you can justify the investment you just made. And then Judith, you had the comment about developing decks. Definitely, I've seen lots of boards and lots of leaders who just say, okay, we need a deck and that's going to solve everything. And I'm not against having a deck. Know what your value is, know what your offerings are. But then have that in your back pocket, that you actually can have those conversations and then bring those elements back when you're piecing something together. So Sarah, I don't know if your expectations different, or Tania, you approach it differently than that.
I would say, I think having an introductory conversation and proving that you've done your homework and leaving a takeaway, which is, this is what we want to know and show. I also don't mind a matrix, right? Give us a bunch of options at a bunch of different levels so that we could find something that works perfectly for us. When, when I was working with Neil, when he was at Habitat, it ended up being an incredibly successful employee volunteer program that helped our employees get all kinds of skills in a forgiving way that they would never have gotten before. Well, that was a sponsorship and philanthropy and employee volunteering. And we had that opportunity to go and take our employees out across North America, actually, to do that. So I love that there was different options for me. And again, going back to, it's not always about money. What else do you have that you could say, well, we can do this or we can do that? And sometimes, it's things as simple as micro volunteering, right? We can bring something into our offices that are, well, not right now, but we can bring something into our offices with our employees that they can pack backpacks or food hampers or toiletries, or, and they can sit together and have that camaraderie. So I love a matrix of options. And then the benefits, if it's on a sponsorship side, what goes with each of those.
I will say, one of the observations that I've had, I realize I've said, don't ever do decks. No, decks have their place and we absolutely utilize them. It's just about where in the process and when in the process do you utilize them. And I will say, I'm a huge believer in the leave behind. Right? You don't want to have something that's on paper that people are flipping through, that they're disengaged from the dialogue. You're there to have a conversation and listen and learn from each other. The piece you're going to leave behind are the pieces that they can dive a bit deeper into, they can reflect, they can use as to socialize ideas or concepts or opportunities internally. I will say the challenge that I have with like prescriptive levels is often what I've seen with partners is they come back and they've literally taken like the chart, let's just say it was this, and they go, so we've circled all the things that we would like on your chart. We would like this benefit and this benefit and this benefit. And it's like, that's from $1 million partner, and that's from a $10,000 partner, and that's from and then you're put in a position of having this, that's a hard place to negotiate out of. I consider myself a masterful negotiator, but that's messy stuff. So again, I would rather have a conversation. I would rather have clarity of goal, purpose, intent, etc. Understand what they're looking to accomplish, and then come back with a set of offerings with options that have demonstrated how deeply you've listened, you've understood, and how you can collectively achieve the goals you want to get to together. I think that for me is the time that I would bring back that kind of matrixy type option, but also with providing the caveat that I'm verbally now walking them through those opportunities and explaining the differences between them versus this is not a pick and choose model where you get to pick your favorite things. And again, we are not, we do not take a black and white approach, like everybody's partnership who is corporate must look this way and everybody who's this must look that way. Those days are long gone. If you're still using gold, silver, bronze, I'm sorry, that is not being responsive and respectful to where and what businesses need. And it basically says you must fit our mold as an organization versus come to the table as a partner to develop what's meaningful for both of us. So I have, obviously, I really am shy around my views on that stuff, but I just think the days of using that kind of mindset are long gone. And I see a lot of charities really struggling because they can't let go of some of those preconceived ways or outdated ways of doing things. And I just think companies have an expectation that we are agile, evolving businesses just like they are. And we need to be responsive at a point in time versus a prescriptively designed way of being.
And Sarah, do you have any thoughts?
Well, one thing I just wanted to add is there's nothing that offends me more than getting a deck which asks for something completely out of the realm of which I have any control of. And it makes me think that the organization hasn't thought about what we've done or what our work is and what areas in which we're interested in. And so getting that deck up front and going through it, especially when you go through it with your boss and he goes, where did they think we could do that? What? We don't have that kind of money. You know, and then you go into the conversation, like if somebody sends it ahead of time, which I've had, and then you go into, you know, the conversation with your armor up already, and I'd rather not have that. I'd rather have a great dialogue where at the end of a conversation, you spit back to me, okay, Sarah, I heard you need this, 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 and this. Did I get it right? That you're doing this, 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 and this, and you want to do this, 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 and this. Is that right? Okay, well, I'd love the opportunity to come back with something that I think might give you a couple of options. Would that be okay? Rather than me coming in with my boss saying, just get rid of them. Just get rid of them. We're not going to help them. We're not going to support them. And I'm often the one who knows, you know, I've done my research on them. I know what they have to offer us. So then I have to, you know, go back and I always call myself the translator because I was a fundraiser. I'm the translator between corporate and nonprofit. And I love championing the charity, but, you know, don't set me up for a negative experience off the top. Work with me. Is that fair?
It's all knowledge. It's taking the time. It's, you know, that prospect research, you know, and it definitely is time consuming, but it just pays off in spades if it's done right.
Yeah, and I would also just say, I also think coming in with a modest to realistic expectation of a year one partnership is really important. So hypothetically, company X may have a history and is known for caring about a cause and maybe have made, you know, multi-hundred or multi-million-dollar investments towards said cause. But if they're having a very first conversation with you, assuming that you're going to be $1 million partner, I think that that's sloppy, assumptive, and I don't think it sets you up for, again, long-term growth with a partner. I think, you know, that very first investment is a test into the relationship. It is the opportunity to see how well do we dance together? right? How well do we communicate? Do we each deliver what we said we would? Is our communication style open, fair, transparent? Are we collaborating effectively? Have you fulfilled the commitments to me as a partner? And positions you well if you do those steps, like the fundraising 101s. If you do those elements really well, you also have a much better sense to have more thoughtful intention around the budgeting process for the following year, what may be possible in the next year. Again, I think Sarah, to your point, having your name on a giant building does not mean you have all the money in the world for XYZ partnership. And I think, we can get ourselves in hot water as well, assuming partners can come in and just solve the problem, fund the entire program, etc. Some companies want ownable properties that are solely about them, their purpose, their mission. They want to have a communication and fully integrated brand strategy around it. And others are okay with sharing the space. And so again, that's important to know, both from a partner lens, but also from your lens. What's possible? What are the risks? What can you manage? If your team can't manage 5 partners on XYZ property, then you need to have a smaller scope that you can manage exceptionally well, but that may mean slightly higher expectations within those partnerships to deliver. So know thyself and be respectful of your partners too.
And jumping in, just because we've got a few minutes left, there was several people who put in a question about their organization not being front and center related to COVID and feeling like their cause or their event has been parked. And I know quite a number of organizations who just went quiet with their partners and were instructed or afraid to go out and have those conversations about new asks. Any recommendations on what they should be doing and kind of next steps to keep themselves relevant?
Can I take a step backwards before we take a step forwards? So the number of people who called and said, how are you guys doing what you're doing? And I said, so just to give people sense of size and scope, prior to COVID, from a cash lens, we were about a $20 million business. And 7 months later, we're a $125 million business. So part of this is part of it's courage. So again, know thyself, have some courage, be bold. If your mission is important and critical, your time is now. There is no need for you to look back and say, I didn't do it now. Your donors, I'm sorry, I'm gonna name some charities. Please know I'm personally not picking on you, but if you have cystic fibrosis, if you have lung disease, if you have whatever it is you have, your cause is not less relevant because of COVID. Your mission is still critical to be delivered. If you have arthritis, any of the things that we do every day don't cease being important. What happens is we have to think more creatively about how we're telling the story, understanding the impact on our clients or populations that we work in service of. But I have had many frustrated phone calls with many friends and respected colleagues saying, what the bejesus are you doing? Why are you stopping fundraising? Why are you not out there telling your story? So what can you be doing today? Communicating. I think the other thing is, if you haven't talked to your partners for 6 months, the first few things they should hear from you should not be, hi, we need money. Go back to the 101s. What are we here for? We build relationships with people, right? We talk about our mission. We talk about the people we're here to serve and the difference we're here to make. And if you put that front and center as the next steps you take with your partners and your donors, that's the place to start. To even be able, even to allow people the space to say, I wonder what happened to you guys. Why haven't you been talking to us? What's happening with the charity? If these are people who've cared about your cause and your mission for a long time, they're probably concerned, fearful, they probably wonder what you've been up to. So I think just going back to those core elements will be really important to begin those conversations again. And I think, Sarah, you brought up a point a bit earlier from hearing feedback from some of your peers that they still care about those causes. Those are the things that are at the heart of what they do. They're purpose-led. And so if anything, pick up the phone, get a plan in place. pick up the phone, get a Zoom call, chat, reconnect with them and talk about your work, talk about where you are, talk about the challenges you faced and what you guys need to do to start being able to serve again. The opportunity is all there.
I would agree. I mean, I was going to say, and you've already said it so well, Tania, is about a check-in. You know, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything you need? Is there any support I can give you? Which is not about, I need money right now. And then I think you should also be armed with what you're up to in case you're asked, what you've done, and what some of your challenges are that you might need support on. Because I think, again, it comes down to relationships and open communication and transparency and trust. And I would often have organizations develop relationships and professional relationships with organizations and have them come and say, can I just talk to you about something? I'm struggling with this. Do you have any ideas for me? And while I might not be able to fund it, that's not to say I wouldn't recommend that they talk to a colleague who I know that would, because that's the nature of the trust and the transparency and the relationship I have with them. And, you know, don't forget that we have big networks we know who our colleagues are and what they fund. And we sit on many committees, you know, Volunteer Canada, Corporate Council, Conference Board has a council, a CBSR. There's lots of places where we interconnect with each other and we talk about what we're up to with each other. And so you never know how that might lead to us recommending you. And if we have a good relationship with you and we trust you and we know that you can deliver, it's just like a referral of a friend. You're gonna, some of us, not all of us, will go out of our way to do that. Some are just gonna stay in their little thing and that's all they are capable of doing. And but there's many of us who are you know, call me up, ask me for some help on something, and I won't hesitate to make a recommendation if I can help.
And I think it's so important to keep that connection alive, because it is a relationship. You know, I've got a couple people who just touch base with me once every 2 months, and it's kind of a hi, how you doing, or they've come across something and, you know, thought it would be interesting to look at. And you know, if you're not communicating, then sometimes you fall off the radar. And especially this time of year, and with all the challenges around COVID, with, you know, 40% of brands making decisions about their budgets for next year over the next couple months. If you haven't been chatting for the last 6-7 months, I think you may fall off.
Well, there's at least a risk of that, right? So all the more reason for anybody, you know, who's here getting some fellowship and reconnecting with peers and colleagues, all the more reason to build a plan out ASAP to reconnect with those people who've cared so deeply about your mission and look to see stewardship, how you can be stewarding, how you can be caring, how you can be returning in part that partnership to the relationship, and seeing how you can support them as their business goes through a critical time and yours does.
And then, you know, just looking at the time, a bunch of questions popped up. Neil had some really good ones that I don't sure if we're going to have time to get through them. But looking at, you know, great partnerships that you've seen, or, you know, partnerships that you know, you didn't think were going to work out and really turned out to be fantastic partnerships. You know, I think that's, you know, a big time consuming question. So Neil, unfortunately we can't get to it. You know, I think, you know, we'd all be happy to chime in after the fact. But knowing it's coming up on the hour, I really want to thank both of you for participating in this. It's been fantastic to chat with you, some amazing insights, and I'm hoping you'll be open to my sharing your email addresses with everybody who's been on the call if they've got you know, further questions and insights they're looking for, and to bounce ideas off. This has been recorded and it'll be up on Sponsor Circle website tomorrow afternoon. And I just want to promote a session on October 21st. With Melissa Moscow from TNE, just talking about some of the amazing stuff that they've been able to transform their exhibition space and create some new experiences for people. But I'll give the last words to Tania and to Sarah.
I'd like to say, Brad, thank you to you and Mary Beth and Sponsor Circle for inviting Tania and I to participate in this, because I think people do want to be connected right now. I think on both sides of the table, people are afraid about coming off as purpose washing or disingenuous. And I think this is a great conversation to have. And I'm here for anybody who wants to talk about how to tell your story to corporate Canada. And maybe some pivots you might have to make using different tools that you have never used before, video marketing and direct communications and those kinds of things. I'm absolutely ecstatic for the achievement that Tania has had this last year, and she is excelled at her profession, and she's such a wonderful leader. And it's just, I'm not having hives, I'm having bubbling up with happiness for what you've been able to do around the issue of food security. And I'm actually active here in my new community around the issue of food security because I believe in it so strongly. And these are crises right now, and people are very isolated. And so the more we can come together and have these conversations that help each other, that's the kind of work that I'm interested in doing, not working in isolation and being competitive. So thank you both.
Here. Thank you for that lovely show. I wish I could say I could take credit for it all, but I can't. I work with an incredible, some of the best fundraisers in the country, and I would be doing a disservice if I didn't honor their work as well. They are an incredible team of people, and it took all of us to make this happen. We're a little tiny team of, we're now, I think, 7.5 people that have done this work in the last few months. So it is absolutely my team that should get the accolades. I also just want to say thank you, Brad. It was a joy to reconnect after 20 years. Sarah, it's always a pleasure. Sarah and I think, vibrate when we get together. So that's pretty awesome to be able to do. And I also really want to just thank everybody for being part of this, because I do think peer connection, validation, you guys are doing great work. I mean, I saw comments like, oh, my leadership expects, oh, it must look like, I know what that's like inside your shop. Keep doing the great work that you're doing. Be the leaders you know you need to be. I don't have quite as much time. I wish I could say I could absolutely make walking and talking with everybody a priority, but I will say, if people do have specific questions, if I can be a support, resource, or a connection point, please reach out, whether it is LinkedIn, via email, scheduling time for a Zoom call. I work kind of crazy early and crazy late, so if you're good in extremes, I'm probably best reached in those windows, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation if I can be a support.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Look forward to continuing the conversation at some point in the future, and great to connect with everybody here. Thanks again, and have a great day, guys.
Bye, everyone.